So as I said earlier, I am Pastor Gina, one of your pastors here, but I didn't start as a United Methodist pastor. Actually, 10 years ago, I started in the kids ministry. I love kids. I love learning from kids and all that they have to teach me. And fortunately, I am so thankful to be in this church community where I have others who would see gifts within me and graces within me, to be an encouragement to me and to say, you know, Gina, I think maybe God is calling you into something else, something different. And to listen to them and to have that encouragement. And so now, 3 years as a United Methodist pastor, I oversee congregational care and worship ministries. So if you're interested in learning about any of those ministries, I would be happy to speak with you. But being the kids director, I learned 2 very important things about kids. One, right, they just share what's on their heart, totally unfiltered in what they have to say. And they respond in genuine ways with big hearts, with hugs and high fives. And I love their energy. They just help to fill me in being there. And also, too, they know about heroes. Yes, they do. So I wanted to go to the experts, as we have been talking about heroes, everyday heroes, to find out a little bit more. So I want you to meet Lena and Julia. Lena, do you have a favorite superhero?
Yes.
Who is it?
Black Widow.
Black Widow. What about you, Julia? Do you have a favorite superhero?
I don't know. I think Elsa.
Oh, yeah, it could be a superhero. Yeah. And what makes a superhero a superhero?
Someone that helps people.
Helps people. What do you think, Julia? What makes a superhero a superhero? Do you have any idea? What makes Elsa so special?
Frozen.
Oh, Frozen. Oh, okay. But she can...
Her power is ice.
Her power is ice. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? You know, right? Feel the intensity. She loved Frozen, loved Elsa, loved the power of ice. So it's just so fun to be back there with the kids. And also, when I'm with the kids, well, I get to meet their Jesus. I get to see Jesus through their eyes and how they are connecting to Jesus. And even being the children's ministry director, they taught me how to share big, how to give, and the generosity. And I remember that there was one young boy. We were having a challenge back there to bring in your coins, collect all you could. Each week, a different coin that you would bring. All of the collection would go to our local food pantry to help families in need. And this young boy took it to the next level. I mean, not only did he go home and he took all of his allowance that he had to bring it in, but he also was looking for extra chores to do around the house, anything, all month long that he could collect more coins for. He set up a hot chocolate stand when it was cold outside. He was moved to share and to give it all away. What compelled him to want to do that? To go above and beyond. There were lots of kids there, but he was the only one to go above and beyond to give it all away. And I believe that he knew Jesus. He knew God's generosity. God is the source of generosity. And he loved Jesus. And he simply just wanted to share this love of Jesus in his heart with those around him. Knowing the heart of Jesus means extending generosity to those around him. And whatever that meant, it made a difference to that family who received that food at their dinner table. Now that's pretty extraordinary. You know, kids have something special to teach us. And today we go into John chapter 6, the feeding of the 5,000, where we learn from a youth what it means to be generous. Now, if you have heard this scripture before, please just sit tight and maybe that you will hear something new in it. If this is your first time hearing the scripture, I just hope it just really connects with you and draws you in. And I would like to invite Caleb Sharinsky to come up. Is the mic over there on the other seat? There you go. So Caleb, as you come up, do you have a favorite superhero, or maybe you did at one point in time?
I probably thought it was like Batman when I was younger.
Yeah. I mean, what grade are you in now?
8th.
8th grade, so right, your superheroes may not be as cool. Yeah, okay. All right, you feel it, right? All right, Caleb is going to share with us the feeding of the 5,000.
After this, Jesus went across the Galilee Sea, that is, the Tiberias Sea. A large crowd followed him because they had seen the miraculous signs he had done among the sick. Jesus went up a mountain and sat there with his disciples. It was nearly time for Passover, the Jewish festival. Jesus looked up and saw the large crowd coming toward him. He asked Philip, "Where will we buy food to feed these people?" Jesus said this to test him, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "More than half a year's salary worth of food couldn't be enough for each person to have even a little bit." One of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, "A youth here has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that for a crowd like this?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass there. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread. When he had given thanks, he distributed it to those who were sitting there. He did the same with the fish, each getting as much as they wanted. When they had plenty to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the leftover pieces so that nothing will be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves that had been left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw that he had done a miraculous sign, they said, "This is truly the prophet who is coming into the world." Jesus understood that they were about to come and force him to be their king, so he took refuge again, alone on a mountain.
Thank you, Caleb. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So let's dive in here. The feeding of the 5,000 is found in all 4 of the Gospels. So this week, when you're doing your devotional time, I encourage you to look at each one of them just to see the kind of differences that you can compare them, what you find and what maybe speaks to your heart. But I do want to point out a few things to help us in better understanding for today's message. One, John, as Caleb shared, did not really mention to where Jesus was going. It just said that he was crossing that Sea of Galilee. But in Luke, the Gospel of Luke, it specifies that he was going to the community of Bethsaida. And Bethsaida was a desert, a dry-like place. It was not your premier destination that you want to go to. There weren't a lot of extra resources that were there in Bethsaida. And in the Gospel of Mark, he says that when Jesus got out of the boat, that the crowd of people that came towards him, that Jesus identified them as sheep without a shepherd. And so that he was moved with compassion to go towards them, to teach them. And John is the only gospel that shares where the bread and the fish came from. And I wonder why that is. Why would all of the other gospels leave out that detail of where the bread and the fish came from? But in those days, women, kids, youth, right, they weren't considered equals. Well, only one gospel mentions that there were 5,000 plus that were there, meaning women and children that were there. And that was in the Gospel of Matthew, who was pretty detailed in numbers. But kids were just another mouth to feed. Most likely kids were working as soon as they could, just to help to support the family. So no one would be looking to the youth for answers in that time. But for us today, there are 3 things that we can learn from this youth that came forward. And the first thing is generosity begins with recognizing the source, and that is God. So here comes the crowd walking towards Jesus, and the disciples are like, man, Jesus, it's getting late. You have been preaching to them a long time. What are we going to do? They're going to be hungry. There's nothing here to eat, no resources. And so Jesus turns to Philip and says, hey, Philip, where will we buy food to feed these people? Yeah. I wonder why specifically Philip. When you read the other Gospels, you'll find out that it wasn't just Philip that was called out, that it was the other disciples. So why in this time did John specifically call out Philip? It's curious. Maybe I imagine that Philip is staring at Jesus, right? If Jesus is asking you that question, you might become like a deer in headlights there. Like, I don't know, there's so many people out here that I can't even count how many. How are we going to feed them? I don't know, you're asking me, Jesus? Or maybe Philip was like the loudest of all, the most fearful or the most overwhelmed in that moment and in that situation. And that the only answer that Philip could muster up was we don't have enough. There's no way. That's a half year's salary. That's beyond what we can do. I think there's been times in our own lives when we might have felt that way too. I can't see beyond this moment. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. I don't have the answer. It might feel lonely where you're at. But over the past few weeks, we have been celebrating this building right here, 20 years in this building. Very exciting. And then the first week, we shared a video of how they came from the decision. We were over on the McClay Street. I was not here. I was not a part of any of that. But they, over on the McClay Street, deciding to come here to this location. They were scouting out different opportunities for that, but they liked this one up on a hill that people could see the building and come and check us out. But I'm sure in that time of discerning that there was a lot of people questioning and doubting and wondering how in the world we're going to be able to pay for this building and be able to move into the vision that God was calling us to move into. But I'm so thankful that they took the step to do that. So maybe Philip was overwhelmed in the morning, in that moment, just forgetting of the source of all generosity was standing right there beside him. He was in the presence of the source of all generosity, God himself, Jesus in human form, right there. Philip, he could see the need, but he couldn't see the answer. But Philip wasn't without. In fact, Philip was just moments away from witnessing how God was going to provide. Moments away. God's provision of love, who comes for all. And there's a Greek word for God. It's called Jehovah Jireh, which means the God who provides. And God was going to provide for the crowd that was there in that time, and God was going to show up on that day. Nobody was going to be left empty. That's what God does. So this unnamed youth comes forward there, or is listening and learning and feeling maybe the stirring inside, wondering what to do. And I'm sure they were looking around like, what are all the adults doing? They're just sitting there and then maybe looks in their bag and they're like, oh, well, I got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Maybe I can do something with this, but that doesn't make sense. Nobody else is doing anything. Maybe I shouldn't do anything either. These questions that kind of get us messed up, but yet the stirring continued within and in their heart, and this led to action. That they stepped forward and they went to Andrew. They found Andrew. And Andrew then led him to Jesus. And in that moment, Jesus knew exactly what to do. Jesus already had it. He, taking the bread, lifting it up, giving thanks to God, right? Broke the bread. Then Jesus did the same with the fish, lifting it up, giving thanks to God. Because Jesus knows the source of generosity, God. So without a doubt, Jesus knew how it was all going to play out in that time. Jesus leads us by example, calling upon God as the source of all generosity. And when we recognize the source God, God will provide. He is Jehovah Jireh. 2. Offering what you have. Well, I find it hard to believe. I don't know, maybe it's just the way that we live today, but I find it hard to believe that nobody had anything else to offer. I mean, I get it. Like, people heard that Jesus was on the move. They wanted to go and learn and hear what Jesus was doing, maybe experience a transformation for themselves, that they dropped everything. But to not grab a piece of bread, that seems a little silly. I'm a mother of 2 boys. And anytime we go anywhere, we have to have snacks in the car and water to drink. We have donuts here in the worship space as well. I mean, well, I'm not alone here, am I? Like, we go and we have food with us. We never know when we're going to need it. We are prepared like that. Yeah. See, good. So maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of picturing this, that if the disciples were going around saying, hey, do you have anything that you can share? And maybe people are hiding it, like putting their shirt over it, like, no, I don't have anything to share. Or maybe there's stuff in their mouth and they have crumbs coming down. I don't have anything to share. Like, they just don't want to give it up. It is right that they're protecting it because they know there's nothing else around. So of 5,000 people, only one decided to share. I mean, did they not hear Jesus's teachings? Why do we still maybe struggle with sharing? And Pastor Mike, he has been from day one unashamed about talking about generosity and the way that generosity is a spiritual practice of giving. And on a scale of 1 to 10, he's like at 100, and I'm like at a 3. I am not as comfortable speaking about giving, and it challenges me, and I struggle with it because I want to give to God what is God, what is God's. I want to give my best first, but I'm also married. And we have different beliefs or ways of giving. And maybe you might struggle with that too in conversations. So what do? I mean, at times I do feel afraid and like I'm one of those people in the crowd covering it up or hiding it or storing it up because I know there's things that I'm going to need in the future. So I turn to God. I talk to God in prayer because God is the source of wisdom and discernment and guidance. And I also continue to have conversations with my husband, just as we try and talk about our financial and our planning and how to move forward. So he hears my heart, I hear his heart. And I also continue to look for moments in which the Holy Spirit is moving and like places somebody in front of me where maybe I can step in and help out in some way. Well, it might be going to the grocery store and somebody might be short to pay for their groceries, and maybe I might be able to help them out, or paying for a car behind me in the drive-thru, or taking a meal to a neighbor, or in like our caring ministries, being able to provide a meal for those who are coming out of the hospital. Or, I just pray and I trust, just like that youth, that when that time comes, that there's going to be a stirring within me. God will provide the way and the means to bring it all together. But the youth was prepared to go without. The youth was so compelled to give it all away, even if that meant that they didn't have anything in their stomach and that they wouldn't eat anything all day long. They were prepared to give it away, to share. All and so that others could be filled. So the youth trusted Jesus, offering what little faith they had that Jesus would do so much more. Hear this again, that the youth trusted Jesus, offering what little faith that they had, that Jesus was going to do so much more. Like, Jesus likes to use images to explain things. And when we talk about faith, it is hard to conceptualize, well, what does a person with a lot of faith look like or do? Or how do you know if I have a little bit of faith? And Jesus describes it like faith describing a mustard seed. A mustard seed is teeny tiny, like smaller than a poppy seed. Like, it is so, so tiny. But when the seed goes and is planted and is rooted, it becomes food for the birds and nature and shelter for all of them. It also spreads and multiplies. And so Jesus, trying to describe what faith is like, says this to his disciples. Because you have little faith, he said, I assure you that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to the mountain, go from here to there, and it will go. There will be nothing that you can't do. It takes a step. The youth stepped out in faith. And Jesus asks us to take a step out in faith also. It's recognizing the source, God. It's offering what little that we have, and God multiplies it to meet the need. Don't be afraid to share. Third, God invites us to be the conduit of blessings. What in the heck does conduit mean? But it's a way of moving something from one spot to another place. And that God is the source of this. God uses us to share God's blessings with others. Here, God was the source. God invited the youth to come in, to be a part, the conduit, to share what little this youth had. And the food then was multiplied for all of those to receive, and they were blessed. And did you catch at the end of what Caleb read? How many baskets did they collect at the end of this? Anybody remember? 12, that's right, 12 baskets. So these people just didn't eat a little bit. No, they ate like this. They ate until they were full. God provided. The generosity of one made the difference on that day to thousands. God meets the needs of others through us. We are the conduit in which God uses to bless others. Jesus didn't need Philip when he turned to Philip. Hey, Philip, what should we do? He didn't need Philip to have the answers. Jesus already knew the answers. Jesus doesn't look to us for the answers either. Jesus already knows the answers, but Jesus wants us to come and to take that step of faith, that mustard seed step of faith towards Jesus, to trust the source. So I'll throw you a question. And those of you who are online, you can also comment, and Pastor Ben can connect you. What made the youth a hero on that day? What do you think? What made that youth a hero on that day? Shout it out. Sacrifice. Generosity. Trust. All good things. The youth knew God and knew the source of all generosity, and knew God. They offered with a willing and open heart, a joyful heart to come forward with all that they had, what little bit that was. And God invites us also to be the conduit of blessings and changing lives, to be a part of it. Invites us in to be a part of it. So maybe you remember at the beginning, the boy who I was telling you about with the kids' ministry, who was collecting as much of allowance and coins for the local food pantry as he possibly could. He saved, he worked for it, he shared it. Nobody told him to, because he just loved Jesus. He loved Jesus, and he was responding to knowing that love of Jesus and wanted to share Jesus with those around him. And he gave it all. He gave every penny of it, totally happy, joyfully singing God's praises. He wanted to share that love. And our friends, our heroes here, I asked them a question: could you be a hero? So let's hear what Lena and Julia say.
Some things like we have everyday heroes like firefighters and police officers, and then like other people who do like a lot of stuff to protect us.
That's right. Everyday heroes that we have. Do you think you could be a superhero, Julia?
Elsa.
I know, Elsa. Back to Elsa. She won't leave Elsa alone. Yes, Elsa is her answer for most things. Yeah. I mean, we've just learned a lot from kids in this time, and there's something to be said about holding on to that childlike wonder. I think it's easy to lose it as we go through the day and day, but the curiosity that kids bring and the questions that they bring, and seeing Jesus through their eyes. You know, we don't have to give that up, though. No, we can just take a step. We can just lean in and being generous with whatever little bit that we have as well, giving it to God, because giving and generosity changes our heart to be more like God's heart, and that's our call. Will you join me in a moment of prayer? That God, you are our heavenly parent, looking upon us, providing for us. As we just hear these words and this message of how to giving of ourselves and little ways, God, how you change that and you just multiply it and blessing of others. But yet part of us still might want to hold on, right? Covet, hide the things, those treasures. Be afraid to share that. God, just speak to our heart. Each and every one of us, we are different in the ways that we believe and what we think about of giving and what that looks like in our lives. May you just speak to our heart. Just help us to take that next step, whatever that step might be, to draw closer to you. In your holy name, amen.